Here's what a boundary looks like. Telling someone, I don't like it when you hold my hands when I walk with you in public. Please stop it. If you continue, I'll stop walking with you. Do you struggle to set boundaries? Do you feel like you overshare? Or maybe you have boundaries, but you struggle to maintain those boundaries. Or are you more likely to sweep things under a rug instead of talking about it? If you do, you're not alone and it's not your fault. On the other hand, you may have heard of boundaries and the importance of setting them, but you may be unsure what boundaries really are. So in this video, I will answer the question, what are boundaries, and the 9 signs that you have poor personal boundaries. If we've not been introduced, my name is Christiana Senibo, and I help brilliant women overcome self-doubt so that they can increase self-confidence and achieve bold goals. Usually after my videos, I always offer a free clarity call. So if you want to set healthy boundaries, make sure you grab yourself a free slot. The information on how to do that is in the description box below. So what are boundaries? I'll explain it this way. Imagine you bought a house and you moved into the house. And as you entered, you realized that there is no demarcation between your house and the neighbor's house. Like you just went to your back garden and you realize that you can wander into the neighbor's back garden, they can wander into yours. Same applies to the front garden. You can wander into the neighbor's front garden and they can wander into yours. There is no demarcation. Nobody really knows where your house ends and theirs begins. Now, in very simple terms, that's exactly what a boundary is. Imagine a situation like that. There'll be no privacy. And if your neighbor wanders into what you feel or consider is your space, there'll be nobody to tell him to go back because, hey, there is no demarcation, there is no fence. There's nothing that tells him that he is wandering into another person's plot. That's what I want you to begin to think of when you think of boundaries. A boundary is an invisible line that demarcates your space from the other people. It states and communicates what you accept and what you do not accept. You can set boundaries emotionally, psychologically, financially, or physically. And as a matter of fact, you should set boundaries in all the areas of your life. A physical boundary could look like the example at the beginning, where you don't want people to touch you in a certain way. Do you want touch? Do you not want touch? Do you want to be seen with somebody in a certain place? What are the parameters that you want around people? Are you a touchy-feely kind of person or you're simply not? What are your boundaries? Financially, what are your boundaries? A lot of people find it hard to set boundaries, and so you're not alone. And that is because to a large extent, we have been socialized as individuals growing up in a community like ours that we should make room for others. We should accommodate others. Usually from a young age, we are sometimes made to do things that we don't feel comfortable doing, but we do it anyway because we don't know how to say no to an authority figure. And so as a result, we grow up to a large extent with this difficulty and we feel challenged to set boundaries and say no to people and communicate what we accept and what we do not accept. A psychological boundary could be you determining how you expect people to treat you and not settling for anything less than that. So if somebody's treating you in a different way, they've breached my boundaries. No, that's not acceptable by me. Are you with me so far? If you are, give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what is coming up for you just as we're having this conversation. I'm talking to you, you're talking back to me in the comments. Okay, so let's keep going. So what are the 9 signs of poor boundaries? 1, you end relationships abruptly. Does this sound familiar? You have relationships with people and maybe you have a hard time communicating how you're feeling and what it is you're not doing right. As a result, you just end the relationships without even telling them or giving them the opportunity to know how you feel. And if that's you and you find that you have a string of relationships that just end abruptly, that's a sign you have poor boundaries, because your ability to communicate how you feel may give that relationship an opportunity to blossom or may help the other person know what it is that they're doing wrong. 2nd, you overshare. A lot of people find that sometimes they overshare as a way to get sympathy, as a way to get compassion or empathy from others. But when you're oversharing, you put the other person in an awkward position because one, they don't know what to do with all of that information you've shared. And two, they probably don't know you well enough to handle that much detail or that much intimate information about you. And so if you find yourself constantly oversharing, that's a sign that you have poor boundaries, and that means you need to work on that. Third, you're a people pleaser. This is you committing to things that you really don't want to commit to, but you don't know how to say no. You don't know how to tell them that your plate is full, that you're feeling overwhelmed, and so you just go with the flow and you do whatever the other people want you to do. You just continue with it. And people pleasing is also the fact that people constantly come to you because they know that you will always say yes. If you're that person who is always saying yes, then you need to check yourself again. Are you constantly saying yes because you have so much time on your hands? You're absolutely interested in what they're asking you to do? Or do they just come to you constantly because they know that you're always going to say yes? And you do that from a place where you find it difficult to say no. And so you just have this label that, oh, she's a go-to person, but you're doing it not from a place that you're happy, but because you have a hard time saying no. The fourth is a sign of poor personal boundaries if you give in as a result of a pushback or as a result of a guilt trip. Or maybe some people attack you emotionally and then you push back. Then you have poor boundaries. Listen, when you enforce boundaries or when you decide that you are going to communicate your boundaries, there are people who will be upset. There are people who you will put off because they're so used to you being a certain way. So now when you say, I'm not going to take that, or please don't do that, thank you very much, they're going to push back. And sometimes they will manipulate you emotionally. Sometimes they will use words that will really just touch you in the very wrong ways emotionally. And if you find that you're constantly going, okay, all right, I'll do it. Check that. That's a sign of a poor boundary. The fifth sign, you hold a lot of resentment. Does this sound familiar? Do you find that you are just really upset? You know, sometimes you almost cannot put a finger to it, but you're just really upset at people and you find it hard to communicate that anger and the dislike of whatever it is, but you just hold a lot of resentment towards people. That's most likely because you're not communicating how you feel and you are letting people take advantage of you, but because you're not communicating it and because you're not maintaining your boundaries, you are just angry at these people for no reason. And so if you find yourself holding a lot of resentment towards people, I want you to check that. And I want you to work on your boundaries. By the way, if you want to know more about the topic of boundaries or simply have any other topics you want me to make videos on, then leave me your questions in the comment section. I'll go through them and I'll do my best to make videos to answer your questions or to help you and support you. 6. You're not clear what your values are. What do you stand for? What will you accept and what will you not accept? It's important that you're clear on what your values are. Otherwise, people will treat you however they feel you should be treated. And because you're not clear on what your values are, you will accept it and you wouldn't know otherwise, and you will continue to be at their mercy. So be clear what your values are. What will you accept as okay and what is an absolute no-no? The 7th sign of poor personal boundary is that you're a pushover. Are you familiar with this? Where people just pile up on you. They dump their stuff on you because, again, they know that she can't say anything. She's not said anything before. It's going to be okay. Are you usually in a silent position where people take advantage and you can't say anything? Now, this is slightly different from people pleasing, because people pleasing is you wanting to look like the very helpful, the very nice person, and you just keep saying yes even when people, even when you don't want to say yes. That's people pleasing. But being a pushover is when you actually have the inability to say no or to give any kind of reaction because you are so used to being silent. And you are so used to allowing people dictate how you behave and do whatever to you. 8th, You exhibit passive aggressive behavior. You know this one, the cold shoulder, the icy stares. This is you indirectly expressing negative emotion without openly confronting them. So it shows up in the way you respond to people, in the way you show up at work, or maybe you avoid people. You know they're there, you know they try to call you, but you saw that call, but you just wouldn't respond to it because you're avoiding them. You are practicing avoidance strategies. So if this is you where you are expressing negative behavior without actively communicating it, then that's a sign your boundary is poor. This could also be you using sarcasm to extreme levels. 9, you take on the responsibility of other people's happiness. You actually become the chief executive officer of other people's happiness. That is to say that you get uncomfortable when people are unhappy. And so you do whatever you need to do or whatever you feel you need to do to make them happy. This is also you just trying to create an atmosphere and an environment where people are constantly happy, and whenever they're around you, you don't want people feeling upset. Whether it has to do with you or not, you're just constantly in that position where you're trying to keep everybody happy, which also means that you avoid confrontation. You avoid any situation that rocks the boat or creates any kind of tension. Poor boundaries can heighten anxiety, it can damage relationships, and it can just create unnecessary, undue stress and pressure. Plus, it creates internal conflicts for you that can absolutely be avoided. If you find yourself exhibiting any of these behaviors, then it's time to begin to work on your boundaries. The risk of not having boundaries and maintaining them is the fact that you will keep creating this internal conflicts within yourself, and you will keep stealing your happiness. Give this video a thumbs up, please share it if it helped you, and subscribe for more videos. Remember, if you want to start building healthy boundaries, then take advantage of my free clarity call to help you start doing just that. Until I see you with my next video, I want you to watch these videos and I want you to go out there and rock your world. Remember, you were made for more, so stop playing small. I'll see you soon.